My favorite life lesson of all time is self-truth. Self-truth has taught me a lot. And it's so funny to me sometimes because I chuckle about this, because I come from a history where there was never any self-truth. I lived in 99.9% denial and distortion. And I just thank the Lord above for such great transformation and revelation. And what I pity and I earnestly pray for are those who struggle with the gap of distortion and self-truth. There's a fine line between distortion and self-truth/reality. It is easier to live in distortion, and I could take it from my own experiences, because when I lived in a distorted reality, in a falsehood, in a false reality, it was easier for me to deny things that were obvious. It was easier for me to not look at truth, because sometimes not all people or not most people want to have that truth moment. And not all people, so it's easier for you to look away and be in denial, and denial eventually turns into distortion of the reality. And so most times you can only do that for so long until it wears and tears you down. I mean, I know it did for me. And at that point in time in my life, I was getting sick and tired of not standing in my truth, but it wasn't a realization like, I'm not standing in my truth. No. It was just, there was slow accumulation of processes that were happening in my life, where we don't even have to go far. We could talk about weight itself. I was in denial of my weight. The scale is saying one number, and I'm in my mind, I'm not computing. I've trained my mind to distort the reality when the scale is clearly telling me that I'm at a health risk. So I mean, that's a very detailed example of some of the things that I distorted with my life. I realized I was afraid to live in self-truth because I was afraid to tell myself the truth, I guess. I realized that the truth would hurt, and I realized the truth wouldn't be nice. The truth would be ugly. But once is once and when mixed together, by the way, new word, look it up. But once I started to walk in my self-truth, and self-truth is the moment that you just have to make with yourself to start being brutally honest with yourself. You can do this. You can. You really can. I didn't know if I could, but I just started being brutally honest with myself. Yes, it wasn't an overnight process. It was an overtime process. I started with small little wins first, small little battles first, and then we graduate to the others. Just like when my clothes could not fit, and the scale was clearly telling me that, sister girl, you are a health threat to yourself. And my clothes were not fitting, and I just was, the clothes have shrunk. And I'll never forget it. My mom is the best when it comes to brutal honesty. And she just told me one time to say, clothes never shrink. People put on weight, clothes don't shrink. And I used to think, man, what does she know? My clothes shrunk. I didn't wash them in a good cycle or the right cycle. But reality is, I had the same clothes. They were not washer sensitive. I put on weight. I could not fit those jeans because I had put on some weight, because the scale was telling me that. But the minute the reason why I love talking about self-truth is because it is so liberating and it is so freeing. The minute that I started catching on to the small parts of my life that needed the reality and the truth of it, I started being able to tackle the bigger aspects of my life. For instance, when I start to realize that, okay, I've been lying to myself about the scale, and it's not, the clothes did not shrink, I realized at that moment, even though it was still a process, that I had to do something to change that behavior. And that's why when I say, when you start walking and living in your own self-truth, the reality of your truth, it's freeing, because at that moment I realized, and it's freeing and it calls you to action. At that moment I realized, okay, I have to do something about it. And that's what gave me the motivation to start doing what I needed to do, I should say, in terms of joining a gym, changing up my eating habits, not eating late, watching what I ate, because my conscious mind was now aware of what I was doing in the truth. And it's a process, and I get that, but you have to really look at yourself brutally honest, and take a paper, take a pen, write it down, and ask yourself brutal questions and answer them honestly, no matter how painful they are. Answer them. Answer them to eliminate distortion. Answer them to eliminate denial. Free yourself, because once you start learning how to live in your truth and you start to free yourself, you will not have people around you and thereafter that dictating how you should live your life, who you should be, when you should go, how you should go, and all this other. There's wonderful people in the world. There's people that just they're manipulators, I should say, humbly, because I don't want to really dive into big name calling, but just as a word of experience, there are people there, and the intentions are not, I want to get a hold of her or him and control his life to the death. No, there are people that just have behaviors that are either controlling, demeaning, or manipulating, and those are some people that you have to be really aware of within your life. And if you're not living in your truth, then you're living in someone else's distorted reality, where you feel like, I can't say no all the time because they always ask me, and I'm so nice. No, there's no such thing. Anytime you put your feelings on hold and you do something in that moment because you're not trying to disappoint someone, is the moment important time you have to take a truth-o-meter, a true evaluation of your truth meter, and asking yourself the meaty questions. Is this really what I want to do? It's a working process, but I've had to do it myself. There's things that have happened, but I have to, you are you. Feel free to talk to yourself. And I ask myself questions. I say, well, do we really want to? No, we don't. Or do we really need to? No, we don't. Oh, is this right? No, it's not. Because if you stand in your truth, you free yourself. You free yourself to be and become the person you are supposed to be. Not the clone that other people want you to be. Not the twin or triplet that other people want you to be. Not the replica that other people want you to be. You free yourself into yourself to become the person that you were intended to be. So I urge you to discover the art of freeing yourself by being true to yourself and standing in your self-truth and eliminating a distorted reality, but claiming a true reality.